Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. And today I'm delighted to sit down once again with Frederik Gregaard, the CEO of the Cardano Foundation. Frederik, you're very welcome back on the channel, and thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always fun to be here with you, Paul.
Yeah, so look, we're going to go straight into it. There's lots of topics that I want to cover. We just had the announcement about the summit. Definitely going to have a few questions around that. Looking back at last year, a few things this year. We've seen some integrations with Cardano coming from the Dubai side. We might touch on that. But before we jump into that, for anyone who hasn't heard of the Cardano Foundation before or what your role is, can you give that? And I'll leave links down below to our other interviews that go a bit deeper into it for anyone new. But to anyone who hasn't heard of it, what is the CF and the role of it?
Yeah, the Cardano Foundation is an independent Swiss not-for-profit organization which is tasked with the advancement of public digital infrastructure, so more specifically third-generation blockchains such as Cardano. And the way I look at it is we're optimizing on the long time axis. So if you think about it, you can optimize problems for what's optimal for tomorrow, or you can optimize for what's optimal for 10 or 20 years. We're looking more at the 10 and 20 years. And when you sort of dig down one level lower than that, that basically means we're looking at operation resilience. So disaster recovery, rollback options, how can you, if you put a hospital on a blockchain, how can you ensure that the patient data and stuff like that also are accurate and exact and lives there in the next 5, 10, 15 years, for instance. We're looking at adoption and we're looking at education. So basically that's the three pillars we're trying to focus our work around.
Great. And I suppose then for Cardano now, your own personal thoughts on where Cardano is now versus I suppose it was the middle of last year by the time we were talking last. So what's your own thoughts on the progression of Cardano, where we are now, and even looking across the crypto space? Because I know you talk to a lot of regulators and different entities out there. How is the perception of Cardano and crypto in general now?
I think if I may, the bear market has been amazingly for Cardano, right? So we've been seeing progress across the bear market on all axes. And I think specifically the foundation has recorded major growth in all areas of the three areas we're looking at, right? So in operation resilience, as I touched upon before, we really seen that we are able now in real time to basically monitor the capabilities and the sort of the state of the network. And that has added immensely also to when we speak to regulators around things like DORA and other things, but also around the comfort level around mitigating the risk of doing an outsourcing to an infrastructure you don't control. So on top of that, the advent of the Cardano Academy has allowed anyone around the world to learn about blockchain and Cardano. And I think we already see the institutional adoption coming out of that. So I don't know if you saw that, but we signed a deal with Petrobras, which is one of the world's largest oil producers, because they basically said, we want to actually change our operating model. We still might want to be within energy business, but more sustainable. And we need to embrace new technologies. And therefore, the Cardano Academy is becoming a stepping stone for upgrading their employees to what's actually possible in terms of changing their target operating model. But it also means that many universities and others can now take our free materials and put that into their education courses. And it means wherever you are in the world, you can get high quality free education on third generation blockchain. So I think this is amazing. Huh? We also launched what we think about as the Cardano Identity Wallet. And if you want, we can go deeper into that. But the main idea here is that Cardano is about multiple different identities. It's not just about having one identity like on Bitcoin. And the ability to basically have machine identities, whether that is big tractors who's picking up cotton, or satellite images of a forest, or a production facility who's doing sorting of some kind of a gadget or chip production, right? You really need to have a situation where you can have really good machine identities, but this actually goes one step further into enterprise identities and into self-sovereign identities, because the standards we use is something called V3C, but also something called carry. And for those you who are a little bit nerdy into banking, the carry standard is what's basically the legal entity identifier, the so-called LEI, is using in terms of cryptography and standardization. And that is when wherever you are around the world, if you are trading papers So, it could be stocks or shares or derivatives or whatever it is, and you're settling between two institutional entities that will already now have an LEI number. And that means that whether you want to keep that in native crypto and anchor it on Cardano, or if you want to do that in a permission centralized setup, or you want to run with the LEI standard, you now have something which is interoperable across these multiple systems. And the thing which I find really, really cool is that we are the first one who basically done that on mobile first, right? That means that you can actually manage a decentralized identity who can be anchored on blockchain or not on blockchain on the hardware security module of your phone, right? And you can manage multiple identities if it would be a machine park or something like that. And we've done all of that in open source. So we're having really cool discussions right now with different wallet providers, but also people outside our ecosystem about implementing that, because they've seen this as one of the largest weak points when you're adding data to a blockchain, about how can you verify that you have that you have the rights, the permissions, and that you are who you say you are in terms of adding that data. So I think this has been a really fantastic thing that we could launch that in December, and we've already seen a lot of requests and a lot of just a lot of buzz around that from many players. Then, of course, SIP 1694 has marked the beginning of Voltaire. I think the proposal sets out for a vision for a more inclusive and equitable on-chain governance model for Cardano. And I think this is really, really exciting. Of course, there's a trade-off here. So when you have centralization, whatever that is, right, and whatever, on the journey you are, decisions can be taken fast. So if you look at Tether, for instance, right? Tether is a commercial company, right, running a stablecoin, and they can take very fast decisions. If you compare that to maybe MakerDAO or Aave, who's like super decentralized and run by a DAO, you can see that their ability to change or approve code updates and so on are very limited compared to that, right? So it's going to be super, super interesting to see how our tri-party government is going to work and be elected through this year and next year. And also if we can actually maintain the rate of deployment and product to market fit adjustments with a really an on-chain government. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to basically go into the foundation of society and also show how you can run countries and nation states in a new way, powered by technology and accountability.
Yeah. Sorry, don't know you finished there.
No, but it's fine. I just jump in.
About 5 or 6 different questions from the different topics you touched on there. So I'll go back to the beginning, the Cardano Academy, and when you had the partnership with, I'm going to get the name wrong, but Petrobras, they're South American company. Petrobras.
Yeah.
Do you create a custom version of the Academy for them, or do they come in and use the same version as everyone else? And is that open to other companies to use then?
No, they're actually going to use the same scripts as everybody else. Now there's going to be some NFT certification and some other things which is sort of bespoke to how they've been running and thinking about blockchain education, but the actual scripts is the same. But they didn't even ask us for it, but we actually taken the decision that we're going to try and get a Portuguese version out to inspire people to do more translations, because you've seen there's only English available right now, and we think that's a bit too limited in a world we're in today. So we're going to create a full Portuguese version out of that to test how that works. But ideally speaking, we would like to get to a situation that the community can translate and they can verify and maintain these translations. For us, what was important was the scripts, the description of the implementation of Cardano. I think this is of utmost importance to basically expand the knowledge of what Cardano can do.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Good to hear it will be accessible to even more people out there with different languages. And that's probably just the first. You will see community members are always good for trying to translate into others. But on the identity wallet, then, this isn't like I have different Cardano wallets that I use. It's not like you haven't created one that's like Lace or Nami or Eternal or any of them. This is just for identity. And can this be integrated into other wallets? And you said there about being able to verify who is actually taking the action, because you look at what AI can do now and how crazy even video AI is. It's kind of scary what they can do and how they can fake deep fakes now. But is this something that ye will expand into a full wallet, or will it be just focusing on identity?
No, this is made for others. We're not planning on going into the wallet business or something like that. We made this. The reason why we basically created a wallet where you can put identities into it is to be able to explain and showcase this to the users, right? But everything is an open source, and we're not planning on running an identity business. But we needed to get to a situation that there was multiple choices of how to represent identity on Cardano, and also using some worldwide standards from Web 2, Web 3, but also from financial institutions, which unfortunately is driving a lot of the KYC and AML standardization in the space, right? So no, this is really made for other wallets and other business models to do, and specifically also made for some of the supply chain use cases we are making live. As you know, we've been sort of dabbling with radio beacons in clothes, right? With these lacrosse jerseys we did last year, but also with what you saw, we launched the Merc store where we have connected hoodies now, right? With the second generation of NFC chips, which basically allows you to do some kind of digital handshakes and encryptions in the actual chips, but also the supply chain tracking we have around the National Wine Agency in Georgia. And you will see a couple of other things. Hopefully we will get that live during the year. So we're trying to really inspire people to really, so how do you actually bridge the physical world with the world of blockchain? Because this is hard. And this is what everybody's been trying to do and dreaming about, right? But we see a set of tools and standards which is needed to get there. And that's what we're trying to provide the community with.
Yeah, that's something we've seen from, or a change I've seen in CF over the last few months, is starting to create tools themselves rather than up to this. The community had provided explorers and wallets and different aspects. Why did the foundation go this route? I know you mentioned something about third parties and trust earlier on, but is there a reason for creating these? And is that competition to community built tools, or there was a discussion around that a while back?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So I think the reason why you've seen it only coming now is because it's taking us several years to get to this place. We first need to have the technical teams who can deploy it. We need to have the legal and regulatory understanding, but we also needed to have the market know-how and verify whether this is needed or not. So where we actually started was somewhere really simple, right? Which is basically DP Sync. So if you look at DP Sync, which is available as of today, and you know that last year we took over the repos from IOG and are now maintaining DP Sync, right? Is that one of the largest problems that was with that is the sync time. It could be in the weeks, right? So if you lost synchronization with the blockchain, you can wait a week to get back. All right, and we were sending out images to exchanges and others to try and shortcut this, right? And there's some really, really good synchronization tools from the community out there. I won't mention any right now because I always forget one or two, but the community has really made some good ones. But there is some things about DP Sync which the community couldn't do. One of them was the reward calculation. So when you looked at the reward calculation in many explorers, it was either not there or it was run through DP Sync, because DP Sync was the only one who had sort of an accurate reward calculation. And we actually took us nearly 1.5 years to get the reward calculation right. And I only got it right last week. We opened the champagne bottles last week. And I don't know if you saw it, but we actually opened a repo now called the reward calculation, which is on our GitHub, which basically gives you a full breakdown in Java on the reward calculation, which basically means you can do a lot of new stuff now for explorers, but also for database synchronization tools around the whole reward part. That was a really complicated thing to basically to recalculate based on the Haskell node. So anyway, coming back to the explorer, right? So why did we want to do an explorer? And we were actually, I'm still a little bit angry that we called it an explorer, but in the end we had a voting process and we agreed that was what we should do. It was actually a RegTech tool. So our explorer is made for one particular user group, and that is regulators, policymakers, auditors, and lawyers. Well, that's sort of 4 personas, right? But that is the user group we made it for. Why did we make it? Well, we made it because many of those entities, they don't use a community explorer if there's no verification of the code, and if there's no phone number they can call, because then they have a problem with the so-called man in the middle, right? And there was nobody who was willing to sign contracts with a regulator about the data quality, uptime, and other things, plus there was nobody really targeting the regulators as a persona group. So what's important in there is that we knew that there was a lot of discussions coming up after Ethereum went to proof of stake instead of proof of work around, is this a regulatory event? And how is proof of stake different with Cardano, Ethereum, Polkadot, and so on? And we already been able to use the Explorer now to basically educate regulators to change their stand and actually add diversity in staking regulation. A good example of this is the clarification from FINMA, who just came out a few months back, who basically opens up for the idea that if you do proof of stake with slashing and a lock-in period, this is actually a banking activity compared to if you do it like Cardano, it's a non-banking activity, right? So this ability to be able to explain the code to these personas was why we actually went so far to do the Explorer. And as you can see, everything is in open source, which added us the ability to give some Java libraries away. So we could actually make it more attractive for the people who who feel home in Java, that they could come to Cardano as well and do things instead of, that they have to be able to do Haskell. So this idea that if we launch something, it has to solve multiple things, such as language diversity, persona groups, which we normally don't speak to out of, let's say commercial-led projects in the community, was extremely important. And the same goes hand in hand with this identity wallet. The reason we did the identity wallet is because we saw that there was a lot of projects around identity, but there was no real sort of, non-for-profit standardization about how do we do interoperability with larger standards in Web3 and in the existing sort of Web2 world. So it's really about, how do we lower the total cost of ownerships of people deploying on Cardano? And yes, there's been some projects who's reached out and said, this is a competition, what we do. And we're like, yeah, well, sorry, everything is in open source, what I do. So you can just take what you want and basically put that in if you think is better. But, it can't really be a competition if we don't, we're not charging for this, right? We're just adding in terms of trying to make it more attractive for people who's not on Cardano today to come to Cardano. So we're hoping we're actually expanding the market size of Cardano to make the community to be able to capture more value on it and make it more attractive for outside people.
Okay, yeah. And actually one entity I've seen only in the last few days was in Dubai. The police out there are starting to use or look at the Cardano blockchain. Do you want to talk a bit about that, what that actually means to me, seeing entities that are completely non-blockchain coming in and using Cardano is a really positive step forward. And did that come from the summit last year being held in Dubai, or how did something like that come about?
No, this is a little bit older than the summit last year, but it was probably one of the reasons why we did the summit in Dubai, because we saw that there was some interest. So this is coming back to two unofficial ambassadors who lives in Dubai, who's actually originally was refugees from Persia. And they're really, really very heavily engaged in the Cardano community. It's called the Ravari brothers. And they have a business around security and have had that for many years. It's called SAT, it's a sort of very successful local business there. And they've been working with the police for a long time. And I sat down with them and we had a discussion about, because they wanted to promote Cardano more. And I said, why don't we do something in your industry? And they said, well, in our industry, people do just forensics on the blockchain. They're trying to figure out KYC, AML, and money movement, but they don't really do anything else. And I said, that's a shame, because, here is a couple of thoughts which we could do. And that actually ended up in me and the Ravari brothers going to the Dubai police, where we met Captain Mohammed, which was on stage at the summit last year. So if you've missed that, there's a great presentation from Captain Mohammed from on YouTube, which might be worth sort of revisiting. And there's two use cases which we saw introduced and presented at the World Police Summit, which is sort of in collaboration with Interpol as well. And the reason why we went into that, because that is very frequently a very sort of centralized world about control, right? Is because we wanted to prove a point. And when you kind of look at Dubai and the World Police Summit, this has become sort of a beacon of global discourse on the future of law enforcement. So this is where law enforcement come once a year to understand what's happening in technology. And there is an alluring sort of ideology about centralized control, which promises lower crime rates. And then what we are suggesting, which is pioneering blockchain-based tooling, which champions the sanctity of personal identifying information within native jurisdictions. So if you think about that, there's a global agency who says we want to lower crime, therefore we need to get all information about fingerprints or ballistic footprints, right? And that has to be globally available for all around the world. That's really a slippery slope, right? About how you basically share personal identifying information. I mean, for the global good, you want to lower crime rates, but there is a way on blockchain you can do this, where you can still protect the citizens and protect the nation states' sovereignty. And I think if you can do that, and we can prove that it works in Cardano, why not? So what we basically built is a pilot who basically shows that there is a way where you can share and match information and lower crime rates without actually disclosing personal privacy information. And I think this sort of dialogue is centered on the practical and ethical implications of adopting blockchain in forensic science. And I think this is really interesting. The other part, which is amazing, is of course that if somebody like the police, they choose to use a blockchain like Cardano for the real work, it has to be very, very operational resilient. It has to have certain security, conformity, and other things. So the fact that they find that Cardano ticks those boxes, I think in terms of other industry use cases, this is of course something you can be really proud of.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign to other industries as well. People looking at blockchain and can they trust it, or what could they potentially use it for? This is a good example of what it can be used for, and a sort of a seal of approval for Cardano that yes, this is a blockchain you can look at and you can trust. So we talked about Dubai there. The summit is going back to Dubai this year. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it out last year with a new baby on the way, but this year I'm hoping to get there. But why Dubai again? I know I had heard Asia, Singapore, different things were the guesses from the community, but Dubai is the venue again.
Yeah, I can't explain that in one sentence. I think this is a combination of multiple things, right? But what we saw and what we've seen in the last couple of years is that Dubai has a couple of things going for it. The first thing is it's a center of trade. And one of the large things we think can really happen in 2024 is the adoption of supply chain and provenance and identity on the Cardano blockchain. So the fact that there's so much trade going through Dubai, I think that's one of the first things. And we got really, really good support from the Dubai government around hosting the summit. Many people maybe don't realize the logistical nightmare it is to host an event of this size in something which is some countries is regulated and others are not regulated when we think about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So the second thing was definitely the local support we could get, because we actually need to get a license to do the event. And in many countries, they've introduced very strict licenses for doing these things. And the third thing is the location of Dubai. So as we were going around and sort of thinking on other places, specifically in Asia and so on, what we saw very frequently is that there's a lot of restrictions of going there. So many countries has, what passport do you have? What kind of license do you need? Do you need to have some sort of test different things? You need to have an insurance policy, etc. But also the ability to travel there. So the further you go towards Asia, the more you sort of cut away Europe. The further you go the other way, the more you cut out Australia, right? And Dubai is just sort of is centered between three continents, and it is a travel hub already. So we thought that makes a lot of sense. And the fourth part is really we've taken some investments indirectly last year in doing this big summit in Dubai, which I think many people just thought was absolutely amazing. And we've seen a big demand from Dubai of coming back. And that makes it a bit easier for us to execute something as good as last year, if not even better. When you go to a new country, there's so many things you need to be on top of. And we felt that we could reduce some of that complexity and put some more focus on icon and other things for us to basically do more with the same amount of money and resources available.
Yeah, I definitely had FOMO sitting at home last year looking at some of what went on with Dubai. I was in Switzerland the year before, and that was a brilliant event, and it looked like it even stepped up last year. Will this be an annual thing that it will be in Dubai, or will other locations be looked at in the future?
We are already looking at other locations for next year.
Okay.
We are a stretch goal to my team is that we would like to be able to announce the summit location for 2025 at the summit. I'm not sure we will make that. We have a lot on our agenda, but we will, as you can see already now, we just announced the summit location. We are working on ensuring that as soon as we know the next year's location, that we can put it out there so people can get organized and get as cheap tickets as possible. And we're also working with travel agencies and other things to ensure, whatever we can do to ensure that people can actually get there is a first priority, of course.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's like, we have roughly 7 months from the recording of this, a little bit over 7 months for people to try and make plans for it. I know we haven't got all the details yet, but we know the dates that it's going to be. And looking out at this year, what's CF's biggest targets for this year, outside of obviously the summit and different things we've mentioned?
Oh, that's a big question. No, I think we've identified some 70 something deliverables we would like to do this year. So it's quite a lot. Some of the things that really stand up for me is, of course, a icon. So we would like to go from being, so icon had a lot of success being open source and had a lot of community involvement, from the start. But we have been very heavily engaged in sponsoring icon. And icon already in February now had about 19% of all mainnet activity. So we sort of look at mainnet activity in terms of smart contract, 19% was actually deployed using icon. We put in a little tracker in there so we can actually see it, which is pretty cool. So if you haven't seen that yet, then that is pretty cool. And I think going forward, we would like to start doing these trackers, if it's not against sort of the ideas of cryptocurrencies, but more about, how is things being used. Huh? So we'd like to get to a situation that icon gets more contributors externally. Then we are looking at the ability or the possibilities of a secondary client application on Cardano. And we will make some announcements about that later. I know that there's several projects doing that. We're not the only one. And this is a collaboration between multiple players in the current ecosystem. So this is going to be a big thing as well. And the reason we're doing that is because of operational resilience, right? If you have only one client on such a big network as Cardano, it does have some concentration risk, specifically if something goes wrong. And we believe that having a multitude of clients who is in slight competition also around features, all other things being equal, would attract more external parties to Cardano. We are also looking at, and maybe this is maybe something you should be sort of paying attention to, but we are looking at Cosmos. Both IOG and Cardano Foundation are looking at Cosmos in terms of various different things. And actually 2 days before the Cardano Summit is the Cosmos Summit in Dubai. So a big shout out to the team over there. And I'm definitely going to try and see if I can be at the Cosmos event as well. So if somebody can come early, that might be a good idea. But we are looking and testing different inter-blockchain communication channels and IBCs. So this is definitely one of the things we're also looking at for this year. As you know, interoperability is one of the first principles Cardano is born on. So I think this is very important. Then, of course, voting tools, CIP 1694, the whole constitution. There's going to be a lot of constitutional sort of workshops going on, leading up to maybe a larger summit in the end of the year, led by IOG. Here we're definitely very involved, and we're looking forward to contributing to that, which also includes a new PKI setup, hopefully. So the 2 next hard forks is something which is, very big on our agenda, both in terms of, ensuring compatibility from the address tier stack. So for those of you who don't know, we've taken over Rosetta, the wallet backend, DB Sync, and so forth. But we also launched Ledger Sync, which is a faster database synchronization tool, which is really powerful, created in Java. So all those things and those components need to be updated and ready for the hard forks, but also all the exchanges and the banks and the large applications out there need to be ready for the next hard forks, including also the test nets and all of those things going on there. So there's a lot of deliverables around that. That's, it sounds like a lot of work, which it is, but it also is incredibly important in terms of interoperability and ensuring that, that not only is the mainnet running, but also the applications and mainnet, as much as we can support, is in the best shape of going through the next two very big hard forks. And then, of course, the summit, we spoke about that before. Then you're going to see a little bit more marketing around the protocol. So what we think about as the public infrastructure Cardano, we're going to do some product campaigning around, so to try and break the bubble a bit and get out there and talk to people around the importance of this. There's a set of regulatory interventions we're planning to do. So that means answering public consultations. We are doing roundtables with regulators, talking to them about not just mainnet, but also side chains, about staking, about incentive mechanisms, about tokenization models on Cardano, around, how do you get access to an understanding of this? But also when you look at the Explorer, which is our main RegTech tool, how do we get that to a stage that right now we show some governance events, as you've probably seen. We also show the staking part, but we'd like to show some more business logic, because the more business logic we can show there, the better it is for the projects, but it also is a lot better for the investors out there, that they can see things are happening and they can articulate that without reading the code in something they can trust. Plus, it's better for the regulators in understanding should this be regulated or not. And in many cases, it shouldn't. It might be regulated under like a non-financial kind of thing in terms of consumer protection or data privacy rights, right? But it should not be regulated in the sense of capital markets. So you're going to see quite a lot of work also going into the Explorer. That's just a few of them, as you can hear. That's quite a lot. It's over 60. We might need to do a bespoke show about that one.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a busy year. And yeah, the 1694, maybe closer to that happening, it would be a good show to go deeper into it. But just on a high level, actually, for what will the role of the Cardano Foundation be with governance going forward for Cardano? Do ye just get involved as another participant, or up to this, ye held some of the keys for when hard forks had to happen? But going forward, when it's all in the hands of the community, where does Cardano Foundation sit with that?
I think the honest truth is we just don't know yet, right? So the Cardano Foundation will always be a part of the community in terms of us contributing to the public infrastructure Cardano, but also in terms of our mandate, or at least until we sort of shut down because we run out of financing and Cardano can run self-sustainable, right? But I think, depending a little bit on how the constitution is going to be written and the rules, right? There could definitely be some path which leads us towards being a delegated representative, right? And there's also some path which could lead us to be a part of the constitutional committee and other things. We are definitely a part of the interim constitutional committee, as you probably know. But I think what's important in this case is that, as you rightfully says, the community will need to decide, right? So we will be able to make an offering saying this is where we see we can make a difference, right? And the community will be able to either verify and validate that or discharge that and say, well, I think actually somebody's better to do that, right? And we, of course, has the luxury that we have a very defined mandate, which is sort of written into articles of association, which is called the foundation deed in specific legal terms, right? And we are continuing to work towards the global adoption and acceptance of Cardano as a public infrastructure. So we have sort of a little bit of I would say, nearly like a little bit of a dual role that we continue this long time access. But I think time will tell, right? And I think hopefully there'll be multiple entities like the Cardano Foundation who's doing different bespoke things. And if you kind of look at it today, there's really from 5 binaries to DC Spark to Immorco and IOD and NMaker. I mean, there's a lot of sort of quite well established large teams who's now sometimes a little bit in competition, other times greatly collaborating, but all are contributing to more adoption and more resilience on Cardano. So I think hopefully what we just see a lot more of entities coming together and supporting and finding value in it. And I think that's why also this open source movement is so important. And what people get wrong about sometimes is open source is not about public source of code. No, open source is about if you can find economic value in something you use, you're also willing to contribute to it. And if you're willing to contribute to it, you have to ask yourself, is the tools, the governance, and the social norms in place that your contribution is being accepted and valued? And if we can create a situation like that, we will see the product to market fit of Cardano is going to, exponentially increase per evolution cycle. And then you have something which truly is going to be the world's next social and financial infrastructure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be evolving. I'd done a stream with Rick McCracken last week just to kind of catch up on the latest on it. And he was talking about minimal viable governance is what we will get in the next few months. And that's going to evolve over the next few years. And we see how it all works. And a few other things you touched on for CF coming this year, I think a lot of people will be happy to hear on the interoperability and looking at ways that you can go between chains, and as well as the marketing side. People ask lots of times what's been done for Cardano. But on the other side as well is stablecoins, USDC, centralized exchange listings for Cardano native assets. Does the Cardano Foundation get involved? We've heard mixed stories about USDC, what they want, what they don't want. We don't really know from, I suppose, community perspective, but does the foundation get involved in that as well as centralized listings for native assets? It's another popular topic right now.
I think the answer is yes and yes. Now the question is, should we? Is probably a very hard one, right? So let's start by the stable coins. First and foremost, I would like to highlight that there is a lot of really good stablecoin projects on Cardano already, and Cardano is a little bit unique because the people have a very strong belief in the operational resilience and the network, the networking stack on Cardano. That means that where other blockchains, you would like to get out to a stable coin as soon as you see the risk is emerging, not only the volatility, but the actual risk of the network, right? You like to sort of de-risk yourself a bit. And we don't have the same sort of need on Cardano because it works really well, knock on wood. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't take discussions with the world's largest stablecoin issuers again and again about why they're not on Cardano when, simply put, Cardano has the best infrastructure, the best community, and the best scaling opportunities, right? So we do think that one of our jobs is definitely to take those discussions. So yeah, we do get involved also because very frequently we do the technical integration and the help desk for many of these integration projects, right? So we do get involved. Then there's of course the regulatory part of it. Sometimes we're being asked, what's the difference between MiCA and non-MiCA and algorithmic stablecoin compared to an asset-backed stablecoin. I was just spending some time with the Department of Financial Services in New York State, right, where we had a long discussion about why they only accept T+2 settlements and those kind of things. And I have to be very honest and say I'm actually quite supportive of the Department of Financial Services in New York State and the way they're actually looking at it, even though it's a very restricted way of doing it, but they created incredible clarity. So if you want to go to New York, you know exactly what boxes you need to tick. Will it be a bit expensive? Yes, it will. Is there a lot of supervision? Yes, it is. But it's clear, right? And clarity is important. So no, we are both sometimes being dragged into it, and other times we've been very proactive in trying to attract some of these projects to the Cardano blockchain. Now it does take two to tango, So if people come with unreasonable demands or don't have the community's best interest at heart, we might not spend too much time on it, right? And then I'm just happy to see that the community itself then does some working groups and take the spoon in their hand and try and do it. The reason why I'm answering a little bit evasive is because when we are negotiating things, it's not very good to sort of always make this public until you kind of get to a situation where there's a win-win-win situation. Win for the community, a win for the vendor or the issuer, right? And a win for the public infrastructure.
Okay,
yeah. The second question you had was, you want to stay on stablecoins a bit, or you want to move on?
No, just on stablecoins, I think it would be great to see. I know we have Mehin USDM will be launching actually just 1 week from now, or less than a week from now. I'm looking forward to seeing that, a homegrown fiat-backed stablecoin on Cardano. But I think it will be great to have multiple options out there. So hopefully someday we do see other stablecoins coming into Cardano, because the more that are there, then to me, it's better. Give people options, let them pick then where they want to go. And I suppose from the community standpoint, they want to see liquidity coming into Cardano as well, into the different assets on Cardano, which the hope is that other stable coins can bring in. But a part of that as well is centralized exchange listings for Cardano native assets. So we haven't seen any tier 1 listings yet. I know there's a few projects have talked about hopefully having them soon, but does the foundation get involved there, or how do they help out with that?
So we generally do not get too much involved directly with that. So what happens from time to time is a token project comes to us and asks for a contact at some exchanges, etc., right? And then, and you know, if we can help, we of course we try and help by establishing that contact, right? But we can't really help as sort of lawyers or negotiators for a centralized exchange project. However, what people should not underestimate is that, and what people get wrong most of the time is that a token project on a layer 1 cannot be seen in isolation. So you cannot just look at the tokenomics and the token and say, you know, approved and unapproved. In 9 out of 10 times, you actually need to look at the layer 1 as well. So, and there we are actually quite involved with the RegTech tools we're building, with the network resilience and monitoring tools and so on, right? So very, not often, but you know, we do get feedback from regulators when people are applying for, you know, security, a license for a security token or something like that, right? That you know, we get questions from the regulator. How does this actually work, or how is this expressed? And then we try our best as much as we can, if it's related to the layer 1 part, to answer those things, right? But it's not something we publicly make available that we do these services, because it's sort of a break of trust, right? So no, we are not the broker for that, but we do try to create these opportunities where centralized exchanges meets projects like the Summit, right? Where there is opportunities for basically, you know, showing that it's real people, it's real business, has a real value proposition, but also the opportunity to meet lawyers and meet others who can, you know, allow you, you know, make, you know, help you to go through the paperwork. And last but not least, you know, as you saw at the Summit, we had VARA and other regulators on stage who was talking about, you know, why you should, you know, be in country X or Y and what you have to pay attention to, right? So we are trying to do some matchmaking. That's for certain, huh? But it's hard. I mean, regulation is coming hard right now on the exchanges, huh? So you have to be aware. It's you need to think, what does the exchange get out of it as well? And then coming back to your stable coins, right? There's a huge difference if you're doing something like a wrapped ADA or a wrapped XYZ, or if you're doing an Ethereum virtual machine ERC stablecoin integration, right? I mean, that does not have the same propositions as you do a native asset Tether or USDC. Huh? I mean, this is completely different in my mind, and I think people should be really aware of that.
Yeah, I think from my perspective as well, anything that's bridged, I always just have a bit of a security concern of it. If I can get an actual native asset version, that's what I always want 100% of the time, if it's possible. We do have wrapped versions and it's great to have them, but long-term, actual native assets is where we want to see it at. But we're getting on time now. Just for kind of summarizing everything for yourself, looking at the year ahead, what are you most looking forward to for, I suppose, blockchain or CF or in general in the space? We'll wrap it up after that one.
Well, as I sort of alluded to, right? The Cardano Foundation has a lot of exciting plans, and we have a roadmap which we're looking forward to sort of not just disclosing but also discussing. But personally, I'm looking forward to really building on the success of the last year's summit, while also the last year's delivery. As you saw, you know, I think we deployed 5 different products in December alone. So I think that's going to be really, really cool to try and follow up on that and try and figure out what does that actually move? Did it move the needle in terms of adoption, education, and operational resilience. I think it has, and we can prove that, right? But I'm looking forward to seeing that as that comes ahead. And then I'm looking forward to the even deeper collaboration with the community, not just the stake pool operators, which has been going really well for the last year, but also other sort of fractions of the community, and really doing significant strides on a new version of the Rosetta application programming interface, which we're hoping to roll out maybe in the next 3 to 4 months. We're getting quite close to something we really like. It might even go faster. And I think that will replace the sort of the heavyweight dependency we see today on DP Sync with a much more lightweight data provisioning layer. And that's going to reduce the application resource footprint as well. So I think that's really good for interoperability. And I don't know if you know this already, right? But Rosetta is quite cool, first of all, because it's an industry standard, but secondly, it's not just read, but you can actually also deploy, right? So you can actually, can build transactions using Rosetta, and this basically allows you to do multi-chain without actually having to have too many different architectures under the hood in your project or in your exchange or in your bank. Then, of course, some new partnerships, and then engage more with developers. I don't know if you've seen, but we're having the Developers Summit, or the Developers, the DevFest, as I call it, in Toulouse, coming up very soon. So this was really cool to see. So it's about 110 developers who's coming together in Toulouse in 2 days. And to actually participate there, you had to actually compile a transaction with some specific metadata on chain to show that you're actually not just sort of, hey, I'm a developer or I'm a token project, I'm coming to sell you something, but you actually had to show that you could interact with the code base of Cardano to get accepted there. So I think that's, we would like to see more of that, where we really use the primitives of blockchain, trust but verify, to really ensure that who we are speaking to are the people who really can move the needle forward, whether that's inside our community or outside our community. So much more open source, much more code diversity, much more tooling. So that's coming up in April, and we're going to the FCA. We've been invited to a specific roundtable around market manipulation and so forth. So we're going over there next month, I believe it is, right? And then I'm going to Dubai in a couple of weeks to basically ensure that not only the summit is great, but we have a couple of projects we're really trying to nail. And position Cardano there. So I'm going to give, I think, 6 or 7 keynote speeches at different summits and large events to really start spreading that Cardano is a force to be reckoned with for not just blockchain infrastructure, but general infrastructure.
Sounds like a busy year, and lots going up even in the next few months alone. And yeah, the Builder Fest, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of that, because when you get that many smart people together and look at different processes and ways different projects are building, hopefully it brings out some streamlined tools or processes for others building on Cardano. Frederick, thanks very much for your time once again. We will hopefully catch up maybe in another few months, and then in person in Dubai, all going well. But thanks for your time today. Anyone watching, please do share this out. Let people know what's going on with the Cardano Foundation, what's coming up for Cardano for the rest of the year, and maybe filled in some of what has happened over the last few months that people mightn't have been aware of. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Frederick.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers.